the first to know. Nsem-Pii TV.
John Dramani Mahama ede ababe tu ejase nipa miensa etimi ababe petition no se yentimi eni Chief Justice ye maame Gertrude Toko no yentimi enshine na so akonya na yentimi mfa obi foforo emra misi so na jebekai up ta petition no a etimi ababe to edwa no Chief Justice etimi a request say ope copies of the petition no a omanfo no etimi edebre John Dramani Mahama no up to now me no ka say nyina copies no entimi enkoy obia enim say NDC amanyuko na kwotena ase ne bopo na one asheda a petition John Dramani Mahama pesa one efa kwan bia so etimi eyi Chief Justice edi efri so dia afei na nokre no eba de na Justice William Atubiga etimi edi asem no nukre a ewomu nyina etimi edi ababe tudwa the reason tia John Dramani Mahama pese ohwan ye maame Gertrude Toko nu na ase akonya no sa eye very simple all in the name of say MPP amanyoko no ba and one etimi epamo Charlotte say nti John Dramani Mahama ba no tintina ono nso empam ye maame Gertrude Toko nu na tie ekwan a NDC amanyoko no fa so boss apono se won ebetimi ayi ye maame Gertrude Toko nu ede afiri ho o de yenko na yenko tie.
The Supreme Court is going to sit on Wednesday to hear the matter whether or not in triggering the process with the Council of State, the President and the government of President Mahama have violated portions of Article 1466 of the 1992 Constitution. If the panel on Wednesday come to the conclusion that yes, the injunction should be granted, that is a big story. If the panel on Wednesday comes to the conclusion that the injunction fails, that is an even bigger story. What will happen? Let's see what happens. But Justice Atuguba has an idea. Justice Atuguba, a good friend, has an idea. And this is what he said. I was completely flabbergasted when I saw it. This is coming from a former Supreme Court judge who could nearly have been Chief Justice. This is what he says. He says, when the executive needs a reform, the president is changed. When the legislative needed a reform, the speaker was changed. When the judiciary needs a reform, the Chief Justice needs to be changed. If Nanado could remove the Electoral Commissioner, the Auditor General, and it was good, so should John Mahama be able to remove the Chief Justice. Did he really say that? I hope he didn't. You know, these days you see these things. I hope he didn't. Justice Atuguba said this. I mean, Atuguba is the one who was teaching us. How is he saying that? In some countries, judges are voted for. And everybody knows that. Any political science students knows that. In some countries, they vote for judges. In America, they vote for attorney generals. Attorney General of New York is elected. In some countries, the Chief Justice is elected. They go to ballot and vote. In some countries, it's not elected. In those countries that the Chief Justice is not elected, there's a reason, there's a philosophy behind it why those countries decide that we will not elect a Chief Justice. Because they don't want the Chief Justice to be subject of electoral votes and vote and those things we do in elections, up and downs, and they vote. So when Justice Atuguba here compares the executive that is elected, that when we don't want the executive, we vote them out, and compares it to the legislature that is elected, when we don't want the legislature, we vote them out, and then draws in the Supreme Court that is not elected for the sanctity and protection of our national constitution. We do not elect Supreme Court judges, we appoint them. And then they have security of tenure of office, except they have done something egregiously wrong through impeachment. You don't remove a Supreme Court judge. Justice Atuguba says that because president is elected, because legislature is elected, even though Supreme Court judges are not elected, we should subject them to the equation of election. I think that is very sad, totally embarrassing, completely shocking that a distinguished Supreme Court judge will make a statement like this. I mean, why? This is just the NDC and NPP politics now is doing us like that. I mean, why? It's such a distinguished Supreme Court judge. I have a lot of respect for that policeman. I gained a lot of respect for him. The policeman who was fighting with Nsem-Pii, who went to run for MP and didn't get, Alex Mensah. When the Nsem-Pii issue happened, the Nsem-Pii removal, he said that it is good that Nsem-Pii has been removed, but he condemns the jubilation at the police headquarters. He was speaking like a COP, that this jubilation is wrong. And when we have public servants who have left the system and talk like that, it helps the system. Because the jubilant policemen were expecting that, I was expecting that Alex Mensah will be happy. Alex Mensah said, well, yeah, it's good that, but you can't jubilate when the IGP is gone, he's your boss. Now, contrast that to my Lord, Mr. Justice Atuguba, who says that president is elected, parliamentarians are elected. When we don't like president, we change it. Do we have a schedule in Ghana where every 4 years we go and elect chief justice? Do we do that? Every 4 years, do we go and elect a chief justice? We want our constitutional democracy to be sustained. He of all people, a law lord, must want the constitutional democracy to be sustained. That's why we have one chief justice swearing in 3-4 presidents. Chief Justice Georgina Wood swore in Professor Mills. Chief Justice Georgina Wood swore in President John Dramani Mahama. Chief Justice Georgina Wood swore in Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Chief Justice Aban swore in Fly Lieutenant Rawlings in 1997. Chief Justice Aban swore in John Ajekum Kufuor, because the chief justices are not subject to elections, so that they have longevity and they have administrative authority. Justice Atuguba, who was the lead judge for the election petition 1, such a distinguished career, now says that when the executive needs reform, the president is changed. The president is not changed when executive needs reform. The president is changed at the ballot box every 4 years. We can change presidents every 4 years. That's the constitution that we have written to ourselves. So it's not, we don't change because the executive needs reform. If the executive needs reform in 2018, we will not be able to change it because we have to wait for 2020 before there's an election. If today the executive needs reform, we can identify it. Even if we come to the conclusion, every Ghanaian comes to the conclusion that the executive in Ghana needs reform, we cannot do anything about it until December 7, 2028. That is the constitution that we have given to ourselves. And you have a Supreme Court judge speaking in a way that completely undermines the constitution in this manner. Oh, my goodness. Wow. My Lord, how are you? My Lord, good evening, my Lord. Your Lordship, with the greatest of respect, Your Lordship, with the greatest of respect, this one, I beg you, my Lord, with the greatest of respect, this one. As somebody said, wrote in the text, President Mahama had told the NDC legal people in 2023 at Ho that if they come to power, some of them should want to be judges so that they can change the judicial reform. And then in a recent interview on City TV's, on Channel 1 TV's Bernard Avle's show, Felix Kwachio-Fosu said something about the judiciary. Listen to it, and let's see whether we can establish a trend. Have a listen.
Again, the Chief Justice is not at the beck and call of the president. She's the head, I beg your pardon, of an independent institution.
No, I'm talking about the view towards him. I'm not talking about whether she can be removed.
I thought we have our own views. I have my own views on it. And indeed, Bernard, I'm sure you followed me. I've also been very critical of the judiciary. I don't think that they were fair to the NDC. To be honest, and I don't think they've been fair to the NDC for 32 years.
So even whilst you were in power in the previous...
Yes, I mean, you recall the Rawlings era. The government of the day lost just about every case that went to court. You recall the famous case about June 4th and 31st December, the GBC case, and not the one that J.H. Mensah took to court in terms of whether ministers should be vetted again once they've been appointed ministers previously or not. We lost all those cases. Under the MPP, I would say, I'm a member of the executive, I'm a member of the Parliament, and I have not hidden my dissatisfaction about the way that the judiciary has performed in this country. Look, they were manifestly unfair. Again, the Chief Justice is not...
Need I say more? I don't know. Felix Kwachio-Fosu says that the Supreme Court decision in J.H. Mensah and Attorney General was wrong. I mean, this decision that has been celebrated everywhere has become the backbone of our constitution. The decision in 31st December, which has been celebrated across the world by socialists and Democrats, Republicans, everywhere, that decision showed that the Ghanaian democracy had been born. Felix Kwachio-Fosu says that those decisions were wrong and that they were against NDC. Is there a trend? Is there a trend? Is there something somebody wants to do to remove a Chief Justice, to show muscle, and they have support from former Supreme Court judges, and they are getting this support, and they are moving on? Just for information, on the Judicial Council, the President has seats on the Judicial Council. One of the people President Mahama nominated to go on the Judicial Council was Kofi Totobi Kwache. The Honorable Kofi Totobi Kwache is a security and intelligence man. He's one of the nominees of President Mahama for the Judicial Council. I think 1466 is where we are. Where the petition is for the removal of the Chief Justice, as the one we have now, the President shall, acting in consultation with the Council of State, appoint a committee consisting of 2 justices of the Supreme Court, one of whom shall be appointed chairman by the President, and 3 other persons who are not members of the Council of State, nor members of Parliament, nor lawyers. So when so this is what it says, where the petition is for the removal of the Chief Justice. Now you will notice that Article 1463 used the word prima facie. Can we get it back? Yes. It says, if the President receives a petition to remove a Superior Court's judge, other than the Chief Justice, blah, 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 he shall refer the petition to the Chief Justice, who shall determine whether there is a prima facie case. This is what 1463 says, in respect of a judge who is not the Chief Justice, or a regional tribunal, or a Charlotte or OSP, all of those office holders whose removal is by impeachment. When you are to be impeached, the applicant writes to the President gives it to the Lord Chief Justice for him or her to make a determination whether there's a prima facie case. But the Constitution proceeds in Article 1466, 1466, and says that where it is about the Chief Justice, then the President will consult the Council of State. Now, the law lords observed that in 1466, there's nothing like prima facie. So this is what happened. Chief Justice Kingsley Acquah, he was Chief Justice. They'll put up his photograph soon. Kingsley Acquah was Chief Justice. And then somebody petitioned that Kingsley Acquah be removed. This is Kingsley Acquah. May he rest in peace. Very, very brilliant lawyer from Adisadel. Lord Chief Justice, may he rest in peace. Now, Kingsley Acquah a petition was sent for against Kingsley Acquah. And then it became obvious that it looks like the Constitution has what the lawyers call a lacuna, a gap, a space, something that has not been catered for. Because we all looked at it and said that, but in the case of the Chief Justice, who makes the prima facie? Because the Chief Justice makes the prima facie in respect of other judges. In the case of the Chief Justice, who makes the prima facie? There was a whole lot of confusion. And that's the beauty of democracy. The law is a living organism. So the law was expanded. Now, one man called Ejechum went to the Supreme Court to say that, no, I think that the Supreme Court should find a way of adding to Article 1466. In the case of the Chief Justice, there has to be a way in which a prima facie case should be established. So what did Ejechum say? What is prima facie? We've already told you. Prima facie is whether there's a case to answer or not. This is Justice Dateba, who is still happily with us. Okay, so he says here, in my view, the objective purpose and spirit of the 1992 Constitution requires that a Chief Justice be given the benefit of a prior determination as to whether there's a prima facie case established against him or her before the President may establish a committee to consider a petition for his or her removal. This is what Dateba said. He says, in my view, the objective purpose and spirit of the 1992 Constitution require that a Chief Justice, Gertrude Tokonu, Kingsley Acquah, Sophia Ekufu, be given the benefit of a prior determination as to whether there is a prima facie case established against him before the President may establish a committee, because we found out that there's no space in 1466 where this prima facie will be determined. So this is still Dateba. He says there is, and so we are talking about how the prima facie case, what the Dateba and the Supreme Court say about how the prima facie case against the Chief Justice should be established. Who establishes it? Is it the President? Is it the Attorney General? Is it other justices of the Supreme Court? Is it the former Chief Justice? Is it the Chairman of the Council of State? Let's get to the law. He says the issue which arises then from the discussion above is who is to make the prima facie determination. From the analogy in Article 1463, it is clear that the framers of our Constitution wanted an independent determination of the issue of a prima facie case. That is why they provided in the sub-article that the issue was to be referred to the Chief Justice for determination. In cases relating to the Superior Court judges, other than the Chief Justice. Similarly, I, Dateban speaking, do not consider it reasonable to infer that they would want the president himself alone to make the prima facie determination in case of a petition for the removal of the Chief Justice. There is a parallel need for a process which ensures an independent determination of whether there is a prima facie case against the Chief Justice. I, Dateban speaking, consider that the reasonable implication to be made from the context of Article 1466 is that the Council of State should play a prominent role in the determination of whether there is a prima facie case against the Chief Justice. Accordingly, Dateban continues, I am inclined to grant the plaintiff a declaration that the consultation by the President with the Council of State in respect of the appointment of a committee to inquire into the petition for the removal of a Chief Justice shall first determine whether the said petition discloses a prima facie case before the committee is appointed. So, long and short, Justice Dateban in the Supreme Court said that if the petition is for the removal of the Chief Justice, as we have now, between the President with the Attorney General behind him, and I remember that during the trial, those of us who covered the trial, during the trial, the questions were asked of the lawyers by the Supreme Court who were there. Dateban was super. And he said that you see, this case happened when Kufuor was a lawyer. When Kufuor was president, he's a lawyer. So they said that, okay, so who determines the prima? Some say the president should determine it. And then Dateban said, but it's not every time we're going to have a president who is a lawyer. Incidentally, after Kufuor came Mills, who was a lawyer. This is one of the biggest stories of the judicial service in this Fourth Republic. And this is not the first time that there has been such a massive attempt to remove a lady Chief Justice. The first one was during Georgina Wood. Incidentally, the circumstances were similar. The NDC had just won election after a two-term MPP government. John Ajekum Kufuor, he had appointed Georgina Wood after Chief Justice Akwa. As soon as the NDC came into office, there was incessant pressure on Professor Mills, then, and his Vice President, John Dramani Mahama, to remove the Chief Justice, to accept a petition to remove the Lord Chief Justice. So it's almost like a deja vu. History repeats itself. When Akufo-Addo and when the MPP won elections in 2001, when John Kufuor came in, there was no issue about removing Justice Aban. Justice Aban was working. He felt completely unwell. And then he had to step aside for Justice Redu back in the day. And then in 2017, when Akufo-Addo came in, Georgina Wood was still the Chief Justice, having been appointed by John Kufuor, having survived the onslaught upon her during the Mills era. Professor Mills had to make a definitive statement publicly that as a law professor, he's not about to do something unconstitutional and remove the Chief Justice. So that also didn't work. John Dramani Mahama was the Vice President of the time. Now, since the NDC won the elections, the things that we've been hearing, and tonight later I'll be showing you what Justice Atuguba said, which is very interesting, but we'll come to that in a minute. President Mahama is also being under incessant pressure to remove the Chief Justice, Justice Tokonu, having been appointed by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo in 2023. Tokonu's appointment as Chief Justice came as a relief and as refreshing to many, given that she was the Chief Justice appointed in recent times who has practiced as a judge in all the courts of superior courts of judicature, the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. She had gone through the mill. She's been a judge for 20 years. Immediately, she came in and she had led many of the reforms under Georgina Wood, under Sophia Akufu, her predecessor. She had led many of the reforms, particularly the IT reforms that is now making the courts look more modern, like America. So many corporate people were quite excited about the arrival of Justice Tokonu, because in our minds, Supreme Court judges were always constitutional law people. Justice Aban, Justice Redu, Justice Akwa, Justice Akufo-Addo of the past, Justice Apalu, and all of these men, E.N.P. Soa, these were constitutional lawyers. You know, in those days, that's really what it was. Justice Tokonu comes in with a breadth of different things: constitutional law, and more importantly, the administrative capacity to run the judiciary. So many were quite excited about this. In fact, in the final analysis towards the choice of Justice Tokonu, one of the Supreme Court judges, whose name I will not mention now, said that if Justice Tokonu didn't get the job and the other person got it, he was going to resign as a Supreme Court judge. Somebody said that. It's on record. We'll talk about it later. Many people know. So then Justice Tokonu got into the 2024 election issues, where cases were going to the Supreme Court left, right, and center. As it is, with almost every election season, you find a lot of writs going to the Supreme Court. In